show patriotism. It's a paintorama. Once independence come, sadly debates will wash away some as quickly as the next day. But the things we do and say, these are the pictures that's going to stay. So even if the Prime Minister say hospital workers stiffing chicken boy, don't put that on the painting. I don't like how this thing looking, and we can pass a bill because Grenadians they like reading. Don't put that on the painting. It seems that we not maturing, and let me paint a picture of a sweet Grenada where the people could reason beyond politics. Our leaders will have respect in each and every aspect. So what they say and do will never leave us transfixed. Let me go bring the oil down, the strong rum, the spices, the beaches, the sapot, the cocoa, while Indian and Veco to make up for all the pain that we waste. Let us create a new portrait of this place. Their loyalty, what's been brush and buckets, punctuate my country. This emulsion wear out so quick, most disappear within a week. When we act unpatriotic, these are the pictures that's going to stay. So even if we have a big problem, we see the nationwide glittering, boy, don't put that on the painting. Remember the whole world watching. And when investors come, they treat our heritage like nothing, boy. Don't put that on the painting. That thing does raise up my skin. And let me paint a picture of a nice Grenada where you and me could work to make us litter free. Protect flora and fauna throughout Grenada, and investors will respect the patrimony. Then we go bring in the cuckoo, kalalu, the dry fish, Pasu, Fish Friday, Fantasia, Maroon Fest, Saraka, and make up for all the pain that we waste by creating a new portrait of this place.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, Grenada. You're listening to Hard Talk Grenada. A special good morning to those of you joining us on 97.5 CitysoundFM, 89.5 CRFM, 92.9 Sister Isle Radio broadcasting from Hillsborough, Carriacou, and of course 94.9 WeiVybz Radio out there in Brooklyn, New York. A very special good morning to those of you joining us on the live video. Remember to like the video, share the video, get everyone involved in the conversation. A special good morning to you, Linda, joining us live from Aruba. All right. This morning, it's a very special morning. We're having a very important conversation. I think that this week, well, the last 2 weeks has been consumed with conversation of the coronavirus and all of that. And we forget that life still goes on, even though we are in the midst of this issue. Life still goes on. So with us this morning, we have two very, very important people, and I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves, starting with the officer right next to me. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having us. My name is Adrian Panchu. I'm a sergeant of police attached to the fire department of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and I'm presently attached to Fire Headquarters St. George.
All right. And well, I think everybody knows the lady sitting next to him, you know. Good morning, Oslin.
Good morning, Ms. Duncan. So I'm Oslin Crosby, Public Relations Officer of NADMA.
Wonderful. And they're here to share some very, very important information with us. Information that I think every Grenadian must have. So I'm hoping that you guys are listening. I'm hoping that you are sharing the program. I'm hoping that you are getting people involved in what's going on, because this is information that is important for us on a national level. All right? So tell us why you're here today.
Okay. So we are here today because, first we say good morning to all your listeners.
Of course.
Live streams, radio stations. Thank you so much for having us, welcoming us into your homes, wherever you're listening to us, in your transportations, and so on. Today we're here to talk about fire and fire prevention. It is a very important topic. As I think it's safe to say that along with the coronavirus that has been making the news and making the rounds, fires, it's also making the rounds. It's one of the hazards that would have raised its very ugly head very, very early in this 2020. Yeah. And every time when you do a report and one, you hear somebody say, oh my God, another one again. Mm-hmm. Somebody have lost their home, investment, their livelihood, businesses, jobs down the line. So we know that it's time to address it. And at NADMA, together with the fire department, we are doing all that we can to ensure that we do this and ensuring that the message get to you. In addition to that, it is quite timely because we're about to go into the dry season.
Yeah.
And we're expecting a pretty harsh one again, like last year.
Yeah.
So to start with, at NADMA, this year what we're doing is we're taking the approach of assigning a hazard per month. So for the month of February, it's fire prevention. Okay. So the hazard for February is fire. And because of this, we would have launched or themed February to be Fire Prevention and Awareness Month.
All right, wonderful.
What are we doing during that time? Together with the fire department, NADMA, we have collaborated with the department and we're trying to go through the unconventional route. So not where, yes, we come out into the, we use the various media outlets to share information on fire prevention and make people more aware of what fires, the hazards, how it can happen, how you can save lives kind of thing. But we have launched a program in our secondary schools, in our schools in general, in all our schools throughout the island, a campaign rather, themed Stay Safe from the Blaze. It was launched on Monday at the St. George's Seventh-day Adventist School in the Avenue, where we are asking all our schools, and it will come through a circular through the Ministry of Education. It's a collaborative initiative, Fire Department, Education, and sponsored by St. George's University, and we are so grateful for that partnership, where we are asking all our schools, whether or not you have a plan, do a fire drill in the month of February.
Right.
What we are hoping this activity would do is, one, it would ignite a thought in the schools that don't have a plan as relates to evacuation. If there's a fire or so, that you need to have one. It's important.
Right.
You have people's children, you have wards in your care, and once they are in school, they are your responsibility.
Absolutely.
As parents, we know this, and if there's one thing we don't want is that we're here or there, and our children are at school, and something were to happen, and we have to worry what's happening. Yeah.
Definitely.
Two, we want to use our children as our campaigners, taking the message home. Take the message home to our parents. So then, when once children come and they say something, we parents just move. Because we always want to ensure that they are safe. So they would come home, they come home with a message and they will be very excited. Because remember, drills are an exciting thing. And mommy, we need to do this. I want us to do this. Start the conversation at home. Sit down. Start talking to your children what they should and shouldn't do. And of course, have a plan. If there's a fire in the house, how do we get out? Practice, do your own drills at home with your children if there is a fire. So that's the objective of the campaign. And Sergeant Pancho is going to speak to the fire departments, what the fire department will be doing in addition or part of the campaign and also as part of their fire prevention activities for the month of February. In addition to that, what we'll also be doing is we'll be putting up a flyer in every school that would share the campaign name, Stay Safe from the Blaze, and it would also have on it fire tips So at school, as a child, you should know what you should do. Don't hide if there's a fire. Get out of the
Right.
building. But you don't just run out. You don't just open doors. It helps at home and it would help at school. So it is something that we are doing to ensure the message gets to the people most needed. And remember, our children are one of our vulnerable groups, our elderly and our children. And
Yeah.
as parents, it would always hit home when it comes to children.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
it is direct
Yeah.
for us.
Yeah.
So Sergeant Panchu would speak more to the fire department's involvement in this.
Okay. Well, before we get to Sergeant Panchu, I just want to verify with you those flyers that you'll be giving out to the children. Would there be copies available for them to take home as well?
No, it's going to be, the flyers will be placed in the schools. So it's going to be placed in the schools. We would also be sharing it on our several social media platforms. So if you need a copy of it, then you can always take it from there and you can print your own. But you can take it home because there are tips there that will help you also at home.
At home.
Yes. But the flyers will be going in each and every school in Grenada, Carriacou, and P.T. Martinique. So all 200 schools, according to the ministry's list, will get a flyer that speaks to that. So it forms part of the long-term goal of ensuring that the message remains, that it is not just February that we speak of fires, because comprehensive disaster management involves everything. Every single day a fire can happen outside of that period in February. So we want to make sure that we are always prepared.
All right. Sergeant Panchu, tell us how has the RGPF been collaborating with NADMA to get this done?
Okay, well, we have been. Let me firstly say pleasant morning to all your listeners, viewers. Right. Together with NADMA, we have been working together through various hazards, hurricanes, tsunami, and so forth. And as February is designated Fire Month, we have partnered more closely so this for this month, February, to ensure that we go out to the schools, because we know that it affects the children. A lot of the times when fires do occur, you have children who are displaced, they lose all their school books and so forth.
Yeah.
Right? And that actually goes home to the children. So we are targeting the school groups, and Ms. Crosby would have engaged us, and together we would have come up with this campaign. We came up with this campaign whereby, and she spoke about the flyer, but it's more so like a poster. So it would be stuck up in the school, just as how in a kindergarten class you would have the ABC.
Yeah.
In all schools you would have
put
that
it in.
poster up there
Ah.
with all this fire prevention tips. So it's a constant reminder.
Right.
The children come to school and they always see it, so it would always be resonating with them. Right, as part of the fire department's role, and the reality of it is that we would not be able to maybe do drills in all schools with the fire department actually present during the month of February. It would be ongoing. But from the fire department, what we will be doing is zoning the schools in the different parishes and assigning officers to the various zones. So you would
Okay.
have officers working along with the schools. So there are some schools who already have evacuation procedures in place, emergency plans in some cases, and we do the drills with them at present. But we want to ensure that all schools have those things in place. So officers would go out there, do lectures, and at the end of it, we're looking to ensure that each school has an evacuation plan, a comprehensive emergency plan, and then we'll be able to run off these drills. So children would be aware what to do in the case of an emergency. And in some cases, we'll have the more responsible kids assisting. So they'll be given a role. And the thing about it is that when children are more involved, they buy in more to those things. They have a role to play. So the more responsible ones, they might have to assist someone who might have a bit of a disability. They might have to assist with the smaller children. They might have to check areas such as the washrooms, where you might have someone there who didn't hear the alarm go off, or the bell that might be used to signal that there's an emergency. So that would be part of their functions, and the officers going out there would actually be able to identify these persons. So we'll have actually more comprehensive buy-in from the children.
Okay, that's wonderful, and I definitely believe that is a place to start. As Alson said, they are one of our most vulnerable groups. But not only that, our children are basically the source of a lot of information for us, because I heard a lot of this long before you guys even came here. My children go to SDA and they came home and they said, well, Mommy, we had a fire drill yesterday and we were up in the church and they talked to us about these things. But even before that, we have had conversations about fire safety at home on a personal level, because you just really never know. And with all of these fires, before you turn on the radio or you go on social media these days, you
another
hear of a house somewhere that burned down or some building on fire. So you really never know. And it's important, yes, for our children to understand all that they can about fire safety. Before the program started, I was speaking to Officer Pantru about not just information on fire safety, but the different kinds of fire and what you can do to save properties and so on. Because I don't even think a lot of people understand that you can't throw water on an electrical fire.
No.
You know, and things like that. So sometimes you see a fire has started and you're saying, well, throw water. You don't know the source of the fire. You don't know. So sometimes you're making it worse.
Problem. Yes. You
Yep.
could. And what's interesting to note in all of this, I know that because, yes, access to information and the availability of social media, most people may be saying that we have an increase of fires in 2020, but that is not the case. And I'll leave Sergeant Pancho to speak to that. And it's important that we bring this up. Statistics. Has proven otherwise.
I had a conversation the other day with someone and I said to them, I said, our problem now is not that we have more of anything.
No.
Our problem is social media and the
Because it brings out everything.
availability of information.
You see the access? You see
Yes.
the access to put things?
Yeah.
Yes.
That is what's
Yes.
making everything look as if there's an increase in so much social ills.
Yeah.
But in the case of fires, that's not the case.
Yeah, that is not the case, and that is the reality of it. I think that most of these fires are more publicized now, so persons are more aware of it. Because on record for January 2020, we had a total of 11 fires. Right? Yes, we had that fire in Grenville Street, St. George, where you had multiple structures being affected. But that is one fire still.
One fire.
Right? Compared to that of 2019 in January, we had 20 fires being reported.
Wow.
Right? So we had a decrease, but it's because it is more publicized, and I think maybe because the fires happened within the town of St. George itself.
Yes.
Persons became more aware, they're more concerned, so there's a lot of more talk when it comes to fires. But really and truly, we had a decrease. And what I can say for 2019 compared to 2018, it's not just a matter of structural fires. Well, when we speak about structural fires within the fire department, we speak about both dwelling house and business house fires. Right. So we did have a decrease. In reality, we had an increase of 2 in terms of dwelling houses. So we had 49 in 2018 compared to 51 in 2019. But business houses, we only had 5 in 2019 compared to 14 in 2018. So really and truly, we had a decrease as it relates to structural fires. But what is important to note is that of estimated value loss. We had a decrease by over $10.5 million as it relates to value loss for 2019 as compared to 2018. In 2018, the estimated value loss was in the range of $13.5 million. And for 2019, we only had in the range of $3 million. So in terms of value loss, we had a significant decrease.
You see, that's why statistical data is important.
It is important. And the thing is, that's not information that you would just hear off the bat like this. When we engage the public, that's information that we want to share. Because I know sometimes we go off of the notion that all of these fires for the year, I mean, something is getting out of hand and something is wrong. But it is not the case. We have access to the information. We know what's happening now. It's been broadcasted, so people hear of it. But what we can do now is ensure that we have less lives lost to fires. And that is what's important. We always say life first. Yes? Property and livelihood will follow. But without life, the property and the livelihood is irrelevant.
Of course, that is true.
And that is why we want to push home. The message here is that we do what we can to save lives at all times. Save lives at all cost. Yeah, because once you have life, we're going to work again and we're going to see how we can and invest and see how we can own property or so again. And of course, the job will be there. Hopefully, for us to work, we may find another. But once we don't have life, then that's the end of it. So we encourage you, when we speak of having the plan, and having an evacuation plan, speaking to your children, if you have elderly at home, that you need to always remember that you have to have the plan. It must be inclusive of them, because most of them, when they're immobile, most of the times when we hear of the elderly dying in a fire, it hurts. Because we know that they would have suffered. We're getting a little burn and we bawl. Imagine somebody burning to death. It is not a very nice thing to even think about for us to feel. So let us ensure that each and every family member is taken care of. We have a plan that accommodates them, and we have a conversation that would ensure that we speak of them and not about them.
And not about them. That is very true. So tell us a little bit about the plans that you see, it's funny that we have the World Wide Web and we have social media to help us get these things. You may not be able to sit down and put a plan together yourself, but you could get a template that you can tailor to suit. And sometimes we use social media for some of the wrong reasons, and not to really help us, you know. But what are some of the plans that the fire department along with NADMA have in place to give to people those preventative measures and so on?
But what I can say is from the fire department, we do have a draft plan that would be used by officers when they go out to schools, right? Because it's not like you go to schools and you'll have to start from scratch. You have a template, and you look at the circumstances. Sometimes what is important to note is the construct of the school, so it would determine what exits you would use, where you would develop or establish your muster point. Because once persons are evacuated, you must get them to a safe area where you can do a head count to make sure that everyone is accounted for. So that is one of the things that you have to look at. And the access, because based on the access, it could be that it could be across a street. So now you'll have to identify someone to be a traffic warden in that sense, in terms of stopping the traffic, so you would get the children to safety to the other side of the street. So we do have templates, and what we want to see is that trickling effect from the schools into your homes and also into business places. Right? Because it's supposed to be holistic. We're not just looking to target the schools. As I said, it would be an ongoing something. We're starting with the schools because they are vulnerable, right? Because you're at home, you're at your business place. A lot of business places, they might have a evacuation plan, but then you never think about if something happened at home. Right, and in some instances, persons have it in businesses because of insurance purposes and so forth. But you need to go way beyond that to start to think about personal safety. Right, as Oslin was correctly saying, lives is most important. A lot of the times, persons get sidetracked, and a fire alarm goes off, or the alarm is made, because in Grenada, a lot of the places, a fire alarm is someone shouting fire. That's the reality of it. So someone starts shouting fire, and sometimes some people don't even take it seriously. I've gone to business places, and we have drills, and some people, they're very lackadaisical. Some people, they want to make sure that they take every item they had, they make up everything to put in their bag before they leave. Yes, it happens. And in some cases, persons want to go back into the buildings to save property. We have instances where, especially with children and those vulnerable groups, they might want to go back in for things like a tablet or those type of things, right? And they could be injured. So we want to send that home that life is most precious, and person's safety is most valuable at any point in time, and it goes even for our firefighters. And that is a lot of the time, some people they tend to want to bash the fire department, right? Because you were speaking about the different classes of fire and so forth. But when we as fire officers get to a scene, we have to conduct an assessment firstly, because we have to ensure that the area is safe to work. Right? We do not want to put the fire officers in danger, because you go to a structure, a fire that only involves a structure. You have everyone evacuated. It's just the building burning now. Yes, we want to save property as much as possible, but we have to ensure that we do not endanger our fire officers. So when an assessment is done, especially, let's imagine we have a building with a wooden structure roof, or let's say that the rafters are wooden with galvanized on top of it, and the roof is already engulfed. You wouldn't send a fire officer into that building, because the chances of that roof caving in is very high. And these are some of the things that we take into consideration. The building has electricity. What we have readily available to use would be either water or foam. Foam is water-based, so then you have the chance of persons still being electrocuted. So then it is not safe for us to work. At present, we are working along with Grenada to ensure that we have a proper response mechanism in place. So as soon as possible, you realize that there's a need to shut off the power, we can make that call. So we're working along with Grenada in that aspect, right? But once we get there and they see the electricity, the chance of us actually getting into full operation is minimal, because we do not want to put fire officers at risk. As I was saying, the building is on fire. Yes, we want to save property, but putting a fire officer to try to save that property and putting his life at risk is not a wise decision.
I think a lot of people believe that when you call the fire department, it's just for them to come and just start spraying water to out the fire. But as you said, it takes a lot more than just
Yes.
that. And of course, if there are no lives in danger, then we should not expect that the fire officers,
Would
who
endanger
of
their
course have families and so on as well,
Would
would
endanger
endanger
their
their
lives.
lives. It's really not fair of us to do that, because properties can be replaced.
Yes.
It might be difficult, it might be challenging, but it can be replaced. Lives cannot be replaced.
Yeah.
And I think that's something we really need to take into consideration. So I'm hoping that maybe, if possible, you guys can share with us the flyer, share with us some of the tips, so we can also post it on our website so people have
Definitely.
access to it.
We will be publishing it. We still looking at it, just round robin comments and so from it. But it will be available. Once it is, I will share through Nazim and others the contents to it.
Yes.
WhatsApp, the various media platforms, so people can feel free to copy it, and of course you can print a copy and put it up in your business place, because it will help everyone. It will help everyone if we can practice it. If the children can do it at school, and we can do it in our businesses, we do it at home, it means our communities, our country, much safer, and we're ready for that hazard, fire, which can be very, very destructive. Before I run off, because yes, I have to leave earlier than Sergeant Pat should do this morning. Before I run off, I want to use this opportunity to commend our fire officers, all our fire officers, for their response in the incident at the airport a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
8 minutes from the carnage to the airport, not just commendable. I think it's important that we, when it comes to sharing licks, we do that.
Yes, and
Yes?
well.
Yes. So when it comes to commending them, we do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I really want to commend Sergeant Pantru, ASP Corian, and his team for their response in what was averted, what could have been a huge disaster for us.
Yeah.
Very sad day for our country. I mean, the response time was impeccable, and it came through practice. The drills. A simulation was conducted on the airport late last year. Similar scenario was used. And when the call came, when Sergeant Corian spoke to just itemizing what happened and the timelines, you could have just sat there and just said, good job. Excellent job. Super. And we at NADMA, remember, NADMA is fire, fire is NADMA. We're all one, two on one at the same.
Yes.
But we need to commend our stakeholders when they do great things. And for that, we at NADMA join in to say, great job from our fire officers.
Thank you.
Yes, Sergeant, you're supposed to take that. Yes, continue to do what you do. And of course, at the end of the day, we're supposed to be getting better at what we do when it comes to response time. And I know the Commissioner has been stressing that, driving that one home, how the RGPF and emergency services can collaborate to decrease your response time, so to make you, of course, a lot more efficient. And I think fire department would have stood up to that challenge that was put up by their head in that press conference just sometime in January at that press conference. So we at NADMA say kudos to them, and we continue. We want you to stay safe from the blaze. Please start the conversation at home. It's important that we do.
Also, I know you have to run off, but just keep in mind that this is January's interview. You still owe me an interview for February.
No, I will be back for February.
Because we have a lot to talk about. There's a lot to
yes, we do.
To take into consideration. We have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to let you run off, but I'm keeping the officer with me because we have so much more to discuss.
Oh, yes, he'll be sharing a lot with you on fires, causes to fires, and he is a resource bank when it comes to fire information. So, Sergeant Pantru, I leave you with Ms. Duncan. And, of course, to all listeners and viewers, thank you so much for having me. And we encouraging you, stay safe from the blaze, start the conversation at home. Let the children, we need to ensure that our wards are taken care of, they are safe, because we don't ever want those messages, be it at home or in school, that something would have gone wrong. And that we have to do what nobody wants to do.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Ozzy. I can always call on you.
Yes, you can.
Thank you. All right. Now, we're going to go straight into it, Sergeant Pantru. And it's a question that I really want to ask about fire not extinguishers, smoke detectors.
Yes.
Is it something that you recommend that all businesses, all households have access to or have installed in their homes?
Yes, it is a early warning device, really and truly, right? Because what you see happening is in a lot of instances, a fire might occur in the middle of the night, or maybe in the day when no one is at home.
Right.
Smoke detector would alert you earlier, alert neighbors to there being a fire.
Right.
Because a lot of the times, when a person would observe a fire, is when the fire would have burned from the inside to the outside of that structure. That is when you're going to see it. Now, if you have that smoke detector and the beeping goes off, someone would realize there's something wrong. Because a lot of the times you go to business places and you hear they say that the fire alarm has been activated. A lot of times it's through one of those smoke detectors. So persons can purchase a smoke detector and install it within their homes, at the business places. A lot of these smoke detectors are battery operated, so all you need to do is just check
Change
it
the battery.
on a monthly basis. When the light is on, you realize that it's still functional, but you change the battery, and from time to time the beeping whenever there's a fire. Now you have to be very wise in the placement of those smoke detectors, right? Because if you have one in your kitchen, we know we shoot chicken and those type of things, you would set the alarm off, right? The thing about it is that with these smoke detectors, it's not like it's going to be hooked up to the fire department, so we'll be aware when it goes off, like in the bigger countries.
Right.
But what it would do is create within you that awareness that something is not correct, so you can make checks, and once you do that, then you'll be able to verify whether there's a fire or not. So and at the end of the day, you'll be able to stop that fire in the early stage, in the initial stage of that fire. Because if you do not have that early warning device, which is a smoke detector or a heat detector, it doesn't go off, then the only time you'll be aware is when the fire is very close to you or the smoke is very thick, and then you become aware of it, and sometimes it's too late to really do anything much.
It's too late to do anything.
Yes.
Yeah, and I mean, it's important. Like you said, it's not hooked up to the fire department, so a lot of people might say, well, what's the purpose of having one? But as you said, it does help for early detection, because I would not like to be sleeping in the night and be woken up by the fact that my house is engulfed in smoke.
Yes.
You know, and a lot of people who die in fires, most times they don't die as a result of the actual burn.
No, it's
but
carbon
of
dioxide.
this, the smoke
dioxide
inhalation.
poisoning. Yes.
Yeah, so we definitely do need to take that into consideration, as well as having fire extinguishers at home. A lot of people don't take that into consideration.
Well, the early warning devices or the smoke detectors and the extinguishers go hand in hand, because let's imagine you are awakened, or you're in your house, maybe in the kitchen, and you have a smoke detector in your living room and it went off.
Right.
You rush to the living room and there's a fire. The fire let's imagine it's in your television, right? Most persons would tend to run for a bucket of water or something like that, right? You might be actually causing a bigger problem. Because you might throw a bucket of water, which you mightn't stand the risk of being electrocuted, because when the water gets in contact with the burning item, it mightn't be in contact with you or so forth.
Yeah.
Right? Because what would cause that electrical shock or so forth is when the water hit the item, you're still in contact with it. With us at the fire department, we have the nozzle, so you have a straight stream, so the electricity can run down the stream. So that's one of our concerns. But with you with a bucket of water, that mightn't happen. But what can happen, you can have a short circuit within the building, and you can have fire resulting in all outlets within your structure, so you actually spread that fire throughout your structure. One of the important things to note is that one of the first things you should do is turn the power off if you're able to. But let's imagine you're not able to at that point in time. If you have an extinguisher available, then you'll be able to use the fire extinguisher to put out that fire and stop that fire before it actually gets into its full-grown stage. Right, so this is something that goes hand in hand. What is important is that you look at what you have at home. So most people would tend to buy an ABC extinguisher, which is a dry chemical, which you can use on classes A, B, and C, because we have different classes of fire. A class A fire would be ordinary combustible. So you have a fire involving paper, wood, trash, grass in your backyard or so forth, would be a class A fire. And you can readily use water to put out those fires.
Right.
You have class B fires, which is flammable liquids. So we're speaking about gas and oil fires. You might be frying some chicken or so forth, frying bacon in your kitchen, and the oil within the pot itself ignites. That would be a class B fire. Now, water would not be the best extinguishing agent for that,
right.
because oil or gasoline or other fuel, flammable liquids, and water do not mix. If you have oil in a cup and you pour water into it, what would normally happen is that the oil would rise to the top.
Yeah.
So just the same way, if you have an oil and gas fire and you apply water to it, the burning oil and gas would rise to the top of that water, and in some cases the water would act as a transport and actually spread that fire.
Right.
So what we in firefighting, what you would need to use is foam. Firefighting foam, which is the best, but you can use the ABC, the dry powder extinguisher. And what we do recommend in a case in a kitchen or so forth, what you would do is turn off your stove or your cooker, and you put a pot lid over the pot, so that way you'll be cutting away the oxygen supply to the fire, which would cause it to go out. Or you can use a damp kitchen cloth and cover that pot. A lot of times persons tend to want to move the pot from the stove onto the sink or out a window. You throw in burning oil outside. You don't know what is going to fall in, and you can have a fire resulting from that. So if you do have an extinguisher, you want to ensure that you take those things into consideration. Class C, being electrical fires, you can use the ABC extinguisher, or you can use a carbon dioxide extinguisher. So once you have an item that still has electricity in it, a point to note is that items such as the older televisions, the big back televisions, transformers and so forth, have something called capacitors in them. So though you would turn off the electricity, you might turn off the main switch, these things store electricity, so you still run the risk of being electrocuted. So persons have to bear that in mind. So it's always safe that you turn off the electricity before you take any course of action. But with these items, you might have to use an extinguisher to put out that fire.
Right. And I've been doing, because I keep saying that I need to get an extinguisher at home. Because, of course, I have 2 children, and sometimes I'm not always at home with them. They come from school, they do their thing, and you just really never know what's going to happen. And I think it's important for me to have one, and of course for everybody, to have one readily available, so that in the event something does occur, that they are prepared. Now, I've been saying for the longest while I should get one, and you'll tell me his correct name, because I know him as Uncle Dan. So Uncle Dan, if you're listening, I swear to you, I do not know your last name, but Daniel, I want to believe it's Searles.
Searles, yes.
Daniel Searles. Now, he deals with fire extinguisher, and that's on Lagoon Road. That's close to MTV's building.
Yes. So he is one of the suppliers in Grenada for fire extinguishers and other fire safety equipment. Persons have a choice; they can shop around. So you do have Universal Fire Security. That's the company you're speaking about.
Right.
There's another company known as RFS. So you can look it up in the phone book, look it up online. ACE also sells fire extinguishers and smoke detectors and so forth. So persons can look it up, go shopping. When you buy any item, you consider the prices and so forth. But what you would want to consider is ensure that you have the appropriate extinguisher. Because there's no sense that in the studio here where we have a number of electrical items and you're going to buy a water extinguisher to put inside here. That doesn't make sense.
You buy like an ABC.
Yes, you buy an ABC or you buy a carbon dioxide extinguisher, which you can use on electrical fires. Right. But what goes hand in hand with purchasing a fire extinguisher? So you might buy the smoke detector. So you have that warning device. You have an extinguisher. But then you have to have training in using the extinguisher.
Absolutely.
Because if you do not know how to use the extinguisher, you might be like some of my student I had once who wasn't paying attention during a training session, and we went out to do the practical aspect. And to use a fire extinguisher, we simply say, remember the acronym PASS, PASS. So you pull the pin, you aim at the base of the fire. You squeeze the lever or the handle on the extinguisher, and you sweep from side to side until the fire is out, or until the extinguishing agent is finished. Right? And that student wasn't paying attention. So but normally when you do the training, you say you pull the pin. Sometimes you say you pull the pin like you do a hand grenade. And he wasn't paying attention, so we went out to do it, and he had the extinguisher. And one of his colleagues said, pull the pin like an extinguisher. So he actually pulled the pin and he threw the extinguisher. Right, so you have to know how to use the extinguisher. Yes, just a little bit of humor, but you have to be aware of how to use the extinguisher. Unless the pin is out, there's no way that you'll be able to discharge the extinguisher. And then again, if you aim at the flames, and that is one of the things that we see happening. A lot of persons, because the flames are big or the flames is high and raging, they would aim at the flames. But if you aim at the flames, the extinguishing agent is just going to the flames and hitting the item beyond it. What you need to be hitting is the item that is burning. So you need to hit the base of the fire. right? So that is very important.
All right, and of course, if they are purchasing from places like Ace and so on, I had a long conversation with Uncle Dan the other day, and he was explaining to me that these fire extinguishers have a time span, of course, but during the time span that you have it, you have to get it cleaned
Yes,
and
it has
all
to be
of these
maintained
things
and serviced. Yes.
Right. So it's not just about buying a fire extinguisher and putting it there,
Yeah.
and when you're ready to use it, all you see is a puff of smoke, nothing
Yes.
comes out, but also maintaining it, ensuring that it works properly, and of course getting it clean and so
Having
on.
it maintained and serviced. A lot of the extinguishers have gauges, so there's a area where you would see whether or not it is functional. So normally, once the gauge is in the green area, it tells you that that extinguisher is still serviceable, because some of these extinguishers you might not be able to readily just continually be testing it to make sure that it's working, actually physical
Right.
testing it, so you need to check the gauges. Right. With some of these extinguishers, you would also have to, in some instances, it would have to be weighed to make sure that it has the correct weight to ensure that you still have sufficient extinguishing agent
Right.
inside of it. So these are some of the ways, but normally these things would come with a manual, and as you were saying, social media is there. You can look up and get a lot of the information. Nothing can beat actually having someone coming in and do the training, but in the interim, you can look it up for your own personal safety.
All right. Well, we have our first caller on the line, so we're going to take this call. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
How are you, Ms. Thompson?
I am good. How are you?
Great. Since the officers, do they have any plans in like going to schools every 6 months or so and sharing with the information with the younger ones?
Well, as the officer was saying before, that is actually what they're doing now. They are in the process of doing that right now.
That is one. Number two, I work with Ministry of Planning in any sense? Because many times you see massive buildings have been built, and there's only one step. And I often wonder, is like, what the people in the Ministry of Planning is doing. If it's a 2-story building, 3-story building, and you have one step, I mean, how do you approve that plan? That is my question.
All right.
Okay.
So
You
I leave
understand what I'm saying? Because if there is one step and you have to exit the building, where do you exit from?
all right.
Through a window? From the third floor? That is impossible.
Yeah. So I'll leave the officer to answer that one.
And number three is like, when are we going to get the proper fire engines for the firefighters? Because I know what they have there is not the proper tools. I'm not saying any form of ladder or anything is attached to that. They're just normal tankers. All right? So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, and thank you, caller, for your questions. As was being said, the fire department from time to time do go into schools, and as I was saying earlier on, our plan is to actually zone the schools and have officers assigned, so we will have persons working closely with the schools, so the information would always be available to the schools, and maybe more so than every 6 months, because we would be with them, working along with them to have the evacuation plans in place, having the fire drills, and sharing as much information as possible. The fire department also doesn't only deal with fire. We deal with other hazards also. So we have persons trained with hazardous material and so LPG and so forth. So these are some of the new fire appliances brought in for the fire department. So that is as much as I can say on that issue at this point in time.
All right. We have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Ms. Duncan, and good morning to you, Mr. Officer.
Pleasant morning.
Right. Now, and good morning to Grenada, too. Now, I think that the number one problem we have in Grenada is access. And I didn't hear you bring up that on in your earlier conversation. Not sure if you have plans to do that.
Okay.
When I say that, there are a lot of vehicles. First of all, the streets are narrow.
Yes.
And then you have vehicles, whether old vehicles or vehicles used, just parked on the side of the street. There is no adequate driveways all over. And I think when you guys going to a fire, that might be one of the issues. You can't pass. Maybe you have to wait for a driver to come out if the vehicle is motorable. If it's an old vehicle, there is nothing you guys can do. And then, and sometimes again, where the fire takes place, because road access is an issue, is one of the huge issues to my mind. That's one. And two, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, but 9-volt batteries, even though you have them, they're done, but they can also spark a fire. Because I was looking at a documentary one time, and I see that a house got burnt here in the U.S. because of this one homeowner who used to store 9-volt battery, and it ended up hacking and causing a fire. So storage of certain things, I believe, can also cause a place to burn. Or maybe you just throw it outside. I think there should be proper disposal. I mean, I know everything should go at perseverance, but then again, maybe you just throw something in the backyard, or maybe you just have it in your house, in the garage, whatever. It can't cause a fire, and that's an issue. So access and certain things that we might have stored can be an issue. So have a good day.
All right. Thank you so much for your contribution, caller.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. And let me start with your last point as it relates to the batteries. I am one of the fire investigators attached to the fire department, and from time to time, when you go to fire scenes, you would discover certain things, and then most of the times I would take certain items and go back and research, because you never learn everything, you never know everything, right? So thank you very much for that bit of information. So that's one of the things I would go back and look at also, because from time to time when you go to a fire scene, you might be able to identify the area the fire would have started, but then to pinpoint what exactly started the fire, that is one of the most difficult things, because in a lot of instances you have wooden structures and you have complete burning. So in a lot of instances, the item which might have started the fire would have been consumed, and that is something that I want persons to be aware of. In some instances, persons do write for fire reports, and when they see that the fire cause is undetermined, they think that the fire investigator didn't do his job. But the reality of it is that you might be able to identify the area of origin or the point of origin, but to identify what caused the fire, because you had so much total burning, total destruction of that area, you're not able to conclusively state this is the cause of the fire. So if you're once as a fire investigator, you're not able to conclusively state that, the fire would have to remain undetermined. Right? As it relates to access, that is one of our concerns. The reality of it is that we have been working along with the traffic department. So in a lot of instances where we see persons like roadside garages and so forth, persons having vehicles on blocks and so forth, we would have informed the traffic department. I know that at some point in time they would have issued notice to persons to have those vehicles moved. Right, but also we have that challenge as it relates to persons parking in areas and not leaving access for the fire plants. And sometimes we go to scenes and we have to be blowing the horn, waiting for drivers to come out and so forth. So that is a challenge for us. So we, as much as possible, we admonishing persons. You have your private vehicle, try to park in an area, because some people they don't have an option but to park on the roadside. But you want to do so in an area that would leave access for emergency vehicle, more so the fire plants, which is one of the bigger emergency vehicles that we have here in Grenada. Another concern, and not just access, is that we have been observing, right, and the law says under the traffic regulation that whenever a siren, whether it be the ambulance or the fire department, is coming, you need to pull to the far left of the road and give access to the appliance or the emergency vehicle. We are having a lot of challenges with that, and what we have been observing is a lot of persons, because yes, we know it's very hot, they are driving their vehicles with the AC going, music on, and they're not using the mirrors. So sometimes you get right behind them and they didn't hear the siren. So we asking persons, yes, it might be hot, you're using your AC, you might be using your music, but from time to time, when you're going to do your license and you were looking at the highway code, you have to use your mirrors. So you must be looking back to see what is approaching, right? And that is one of the concerns that we do have. So we admonishing road users, drivers, bear that in mind when you're traveling, because we're going into the dry season. As much as possible, we hope that we do not have a very active dry season as it relates to fires, but we would be on the road from time to time responding to some of these fires. So we want you to ensure, because you never know when it could be a structure on fire, someone life at risk, and you impeding the traffic would have caused that person to lose their home, or maybe someone losing their life, right? So that is one of the calls that we want to send out there.
Okay, and what recommendations do you have for homeowners? Because I know that there has been some regulations put in place. Of course, if you can speak more to it, that would be great. For persons, as it relates to the burning of refuse and bush and all of these things during the dry season especially, What regulation has been put in place to control something like that?
Well, there is not a regulation that has been put in place. There have been laws that has been there from ever since. Right. It's just that because you have an upsurge in number of fire, it is more stringently enforced.
Right.
Right. And that is we have the Agricultural Fires Act, which speaks to persons burning as it relates to agricultural purposes. So if you're clearing a piece of land to plant or for some agricultural produce, right? You need to visit the Ministry of Agriculture to get a license to burn.
Right.
That is what the law says.
Right. So it's not because you're a farmer and you're clearing a piece of land to plant produce, it gives you the right. No, you have to get a license.
You have to get
to
get a license to burn, because what we're trying to do as much as possible is control, because the license would actually give you guidelines by which you should burn. And so because a lot of persons would slash and burn, they would just all the trees they burn, they'll put it in one big heap and start a fire. Right? The Agricultural Fires Act, under the Agricultural Fires Act, the license would actually tell you to burn in small heaps. Make sure you have water available. So if the fires start getting out of control, because you never know, you might start burning now and the wind is very low, but then the wind picks up. It takes a piece of burning debris, shows it in a adjoining property, a fire starts. So you need to have water close by. And what is important is that you never leave a fire burning unattended. A lot of persons, they set fire and they go inside and do something else, and that is the point in time when the fire gets out of control. So these guidelines will be there in the license, and it also speaks to burning between the hours of 7 and 5. You want to burn within daylight hours, because within the daylight hours, the more chance that someone will be there attending to that fire. Right? And then we have the use of fire, which speaks to actually persons informing neighbors within your residential areas if you want to burn. But I want to send the call out that in a lot of instances, it's not totally necessary to burn. Right? And a lot of instances, you get calls to some of these instances because persons would report them because they have that recourse. They would call the fire department. My neighbor is burning, they didn't inform me. And if that person gives a statement, we can arrest and charge you. You can be brought to court, and you can be charged up to $500 or 3 months in prison. Right? So, and when we get there, sometimes it's just a small heap of rubbish that is burning, right? Persons have to bear in mind, you have to be a bit neighborly also, because we do have a number of persons with respiratory problems. We have a lot of persons with asthma. We have persons with different allergies and so forth. So you have to be neighborly and take that into consideration. And that's the reason why you inform your neighbors. So at least in most instances, you want to try to come to some understanding that they wouldn't be home today. So, all right, I can go ahead and burn, but you need to follow the guidelines. Burn in small heaps and make sure that you have water available. Make sure that you're always there while that fire is burning. Right? As I said, we're going into the dry season, so the chance of a fire getting out of control is much higher than before, because when you had green bushes, even though the fire got to that area, it wouldn't really spread. But now you have dry bushes, and the fire would spread very rapidly. Dry bushes and also high winds. This is what we are seeing presently. So we ask persons as much as possible, avoid burning, refrain from burning. You clean the backyard, it's just a small heap of rubbish. Put it in a garbage bag, put it out. The garbage disposal would go with it. Right? So we asking persons, but we're really calling for persons to be a bit more neighborly, really and truly, because we have been receiving a number of calls from persons as it relates to your neighbor burning stuff, smoke actually affecting these persons. A lot of the times it's because neighbors are not on terms and so forth. But you need to try to be more neighborly and put yourself in someone else's position. Imagine your neighbor just finished washing and you set a fire. You smoke up all the clothes, the person have to wash it over and so forth.
Imagine
it. So really and truly, it's just an aspect of being more neighborly and putting yourself in the other person's shoe from time to time. And I think that if persons do that, you will have less of these complaints actually coming in. I would also like to commend the persons who have been heeding the message, and from time to time we have been having an increase in persons coming into the fire department and calling for advice as it relates to setting fires. And that means that the persons are actually listening and they are hearing, and the message is going out there. I want to commend you for doing that, and the persons who have been actually informing the neighbors and so forth. Hats off to you, and thank you, and we hope that we wouldn't have fire resulting from any one of these circumstances.
That's wonderful. And of course, there are certain items that you guys recommend not be burned. Things like batteries and these things.
Yes.
You don't burn these things. You try and get them disposed of properly.
Yes.
I want us to speak on the fire safety and fire drills within businesses. I know Republic Bank regularly does a fire drill with their workers.
Yes.
Would you recommend that for all businesses, whether big or small, within, not even just St. George, the island on a whole?
Yes, well, doing fire drills, right? But we spoke earlier on to evacuation procedures and so forth, and that is actually where it starts. You have an evacuation procedure, and persons are aware of it, because some business places, they might have an evacuation plan or evacuation procedure, and they have new staff. The staff is not aware of it.
Yeah.
All right. So sometimes the reality is that sometimes you send someone a message or the plan. You might send it via email, because you might print. Right now, persons don't really do hard copy so much. Right. So you might send it via WhatsApp, via email. And a lot of times persons would receive those messages, but they wouldn't read the content. So the only how they will be aware is when you actually do a drill.
Right.
Right? So as small as your business might be, you have a plan, because you want to ensure that your employees, yourself, and your patrons are safe in the eventuality of a fire or any other kind of emergency. So you want to ensure that you do that. You do not have to engage the fire department to do a drill, but what you can do is keep a record of it. So in case, let's imagine a number of persons would apply for a refreshment house license. And once you want a refreshment house license, the fire department has to come in to check, to do an inspection. And this is some of the things that we look at, your records as it relates to having a fire drill done. So it's not necessary that the fire department is present, but you do it to familiarize your staff and even the customers that might be there from time to time, that yes, you are safety conscious, you are thinking about them, and in case of an emergency, this is what I need to do.
Okay. And as it relates to fire extinguishers and, of course, smoke alarms within businesses, and would you, or is the fire department, do you guys have any plan in place to check, make it a mandatory something that they must have these safety items within their business, as long as they have not even people working for them, but as long as it's a business where you have people going in and out, that must be something that they have?
Okay, what I can say is that the fire department is a part of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and we can only enforce laws that are in place.
Right.
So if there's not a law in place, then there's no way that we can make it mandatory. What we can do is actually go out and give advice as much as possible. What would be best for your safety and the safety of your customers? Now, in order for us to make anything mandatory, what we would have to do is make proposals as it relates to draft regulations and send it to cabinet, where it would have to be passed and so forth and made into laws. That's the only how we can make it mandatory. But I think as citizens, we have to be safety conscious and think and know to ourselves that these things are in the whole betterment for you as an individual, for your patrons, for your workers, and take it seriously. Right, but there would be plans where, as we're in Fire Month, we would have launched it. We spoke about the school programs, but we also intend, from a fire department point of view, to also go to business places, visit business places, we're looking at doing community forums also. Also, what we will be doing is continue with our media programs and so forth. So these are some of the things that we would be doing throughout February and ongoing past February for the rest of the year, and we will look at the various hazards as we go on.
Okay. And guys, our lines are open. If you have a question that you'd like to pose to our officer, you can do that. Give us a call, 440-7377 for local calls. If you have a message that you'd like to send via WhatsApp, it's 440-7377 also. And of course, if you are in the diaspora and you want to call and give us or ask a question, you can do so at 347-329-3101. Now, I know that the fire department is always upgrading, always training, and we may not see, because I know a lot of people believe that once you don't see it happening, it means that it's not happening. But it's good to know that you guys are training and having plans in place to deal with issues as they arrive. Of course, if you guys hadn't been training, that issue that happened on the airport just recently, you would not have been able to address it, right? But I think it's very important for us as Grenadians to be very careful in what we do and what we say. I remember that fire in Europa, right across the right down the street there, and the fire department got a lot of backlash as it relates to that. And I think what people don't understand is that there must be a lot of groundwork done first before you guys can't just jump in to a fire. What was some of the challenges, if you could speak on with that fire? Because in my mind,
Yes.
I would believe that it's challenging simply because it's a place that contained a lot of chemicals.
Yes. So that was one of the concerns there. Well, firstly, there was electricity in the building on arrival of the scene, so that would have caused a delay in response.
Right.
And then you're dealing with area where you have a number of different chemicals, right? You have, because we're speaking about weed eaters and those type of items, and so you're speaking about a lot of gasoline and those items. And a lot of persons they are the opinion that when the fire appliance gets on the scene, you automatically remain there until the fire goes out. But we can only remain there until our extinguishing agent is used up. So we do have an appliance that has 1,600 gallons of water. But when you get to the scene, that water can be used maybe within 5 to 10 minutes.
Right.
You can use all that water. So once that is used up, right, they would have to go to refill. We do hydrant inspections in the areas, but what we would normally do is go to the closest hydrant available. Right, but we know during that period also we had some challenges that relates to water, and a lot of areas didn't have water at certain times. We do partner with Nawasa also, so we would contact them when we have a fire, so that as much as possible they can actually maybe shut off valves and channel the water to certain areas so we can get water for those areas. A protocol is in place that when we have major fires that you would contact other agencies. So we do have a procedure where we would get assistance from the St. George's University, and also we would contact the airport fire department, which would assist once they do not have aircrafts on the ground down there, because they do have to provide coverage down there.
Right.
All right, so we would seek assistance, and then once we use up the extinguishing agent in the appliance, then we'd have to leave. And the appliance had to leave, and when they got back there, when we got the assistance, then we had continuous fire suppression. Right? So these are some of the challenges that you would see being faced from time to time, because there's no way that you would get on a scene and the water that you have, a structure of that magnitude with that level of chemicals, gasoline, flammable liquids, and so forth, that just one load of water would be able to totally extinguish that fire.
And I know a lot of people are saying that, oh well, let's get bigger trucks, but do you think that Grenada can really handle us having bigger trucks? Yeah,
the caller spoke earlier on as it relates to access. You have bigger appliances, then then you would have to think now that these appliances would not be able to go to the smaller roads and so forth. So these are some of the things that these things come with challenges. So yes, it has its advantages, but it has its disadvantages also.
Well.
So you might have a bigger appliance with more extinguishing agent, but then it's accessibility to the scene of those fires.
Okay. Well, we have another caller on the line. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. It's just one most important thing. I'm going to be very short, and I want all Grenadians to be aware of, because it's part of what I do in my job. Fabric. You have some fabrics that are very flammable. So, for instance, when we install in like a hotel, the fabric must not be flammable, because you can buy something. Yes, it looks nice. It might feel nice on you. But that's one of the things that can also cause the fire to move very rapidly through a building. So flammable fabric, I would like persons to be aware, read the labels and stuff. That can help a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Take care.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, caller, for that contribution. I mean, there's so much about fires that we should know.
Yeah, well, really and truly, fire. When you speak about fire, you hear about the chemistry of fire, right? So a lot of persons are just of the opinion that fire, it just starts, it goes out. But you have a whole chemistry. You have a number of elements, actually a number of chemical processes going on when you have a fire. So these are some of the things that persons need to take into consideration. Now, the caller spoke about fabric, but one of the important things also is that of the availability of oxygen for a fire to breathe.
Right.
Because a fire basically, when we speak about the fire triangle, we speak about the three elements of fire, which includes oxygen, fuel, and heat. So fuel is anything that can burn, whether it be paper, cloth, your computer, your bag. Once it is flammable, then it would be fuel. Right? There must be oxygen and there must be some heat source. So what we want to also advise persons is that if you do have a fire within your home or within your business places, on evacuating that you close all windows and doors. Right? A lot of persons are, well, why should I close windows and doors? Shouldn't the hot air come out? But when you close windows and doors, you limit the amount of oxygen that the fire has to develop further. And in most instances, I remember in school, back in secondary school, in integrated science, you did a project where you have a candle lighting and you place a glass over it, and after a period of time, the candle would go out. The candle went out because it would have used up all the oxygen. So just so, if there's not much oxygen within your structure, the fire would actually spread very slowly as compared to all windows and doors open. The wind is blowing in, the fire has oxygen, you'll actually be spreading that fire very rapidly.
Okay, and because I know the next question is going to be, so I've closed all my windows, now I'm trapped in all of this smoke. What would you recommend for a person who is, or even for somebody who woke up in the middle of the night and find themselves engulfed in smoke? What would you recommend for that person?
All right. So when I was speaking about closing doors and windows, I'm speaking about on your way out.
On your way out.
On your way out, not while you're inside, because as I said, your safety comes first, right? So on your way out, you would do that. If it happens that you get up in the middle of the night and the room is filled with smoke, or your home is filled with smoke, we tell persons to go down on your hands and knees and try to get out. Now, if you have an evacuation plan, you would have your routes and so forth. You know how you get out of your structure. One of the callers spoke to some places having one staircase. A lot of residential home has that challenge, right? So what we normally recommend to some persons is that you have a rope ladder or so forth, because it might be on a second floor that you can throw out a window and climb down. So you have that option, because your home is already built. In most instances, to put a next door with a next staircase might be rather expensive and mightn't be something that persons might be readily able to do. So you have that option of having a rope ladder and so forth, but the whole aspect comes along with having the drills and being able to know what to do. But in the absence of that, you go on your hands and knees, because hot air rises, so there'll always be a greater concentration of oxygen lower to the ground. So you go down on your hands and knees and you try to make your way out. Now, in getting out, if your doors are closed, before you open any door, you want to use the back of your hand to feel that door to make sure that it's not hot. If the door is hot, that means there's fire right behind. And opening that door would cause what in fire terms what we call backdraft, right? So the fire would just blaze out, right, towards you, and you can actually sustain a lot of injuries, right? We do not want that happening. So you would use the back of your hand, and if you have to open a door, and let's imagine that's the only way out, and you need to do it, in opening the door, you want to ensure that you protect yourself. So you want to open the door with yourself behind the door. So you open it, if the fire, you get that backdrop, the fire blazes out, and you're protected behind the door, right? And then you try to get out. Now, if there's no way that you can get out in that circumstances, we normally say to try to use a damp cloth to actually put below the door, so you would actually minimize the amount of hot air and toxic fumes getting into that room, and try to call for assistance from a window or so forth, so that someone can assist you from there, because there's no sense that you're running through the fire, getting burned, and actually dying while trying to get out. If that room, you have no fire inside as yet, you try to get call out for help as much as possible.
In my home, usually I put my kids seated, and we have discussions on different things, different scenarios, whether it's an earthquake or just was it last year or the year before? I don't remember, when we had that earthquake.
Yes. And
I was homesick, and I was sleeping, and my children were in the living room, and I remember it very clearly, because my son came and he was like, mommy, there's an earthquake. And as soon as he realized that I was awake and alert, he left me and he ran outside, simply because we have a drill. Do not wait on me.
Okay.
Don't wait on me. Don't look for me. You find your way out.
Okay.
And I will find my way out.
Yes.
You know, if it's a case where they can't get out and I must find them, then that is the case.
Yes.
But they must never try to find me. They must always try to find an
way
exit,
out.
and I will find my own way out. Just the same as I always tell them, look, a fire comes, you get up in the night and the place is filled with smoke and so on. I usually tell them, a bottle of water by your bed and a rag. or a bottle of water and you find a t-shirt or even your pillowcase
Yeah.
and you wet it and you put it over your face and you try to find your way out. Don't try to run out the front door. Don't try to find a door. Your window is the closest thing next to you.
Okay.
Go out the window.
Okay.
You know, so I think plans are very important.
Planning is very
Very,
important.
very important.
I see you made a homemade respirator with the water and the rag.
Yes.
Right. You actually you will be filtering the
Yes.
toxic fumes.
Yes.
Right. But as you correctly said, it's all about having that conversation with your children, having a plan in place. Right, and as you were correctly saying, it's these simple things. You just say them, your children become au fait with them, so then they'll actually do it.
Yeah.
Right, because in the absence of a plan, they might be looking for someone else. They might be going out to safety. You
Yes.
might be outside and they're inside and so
Inside,
forth.
yeah.
So it's important that you have those plans and you practice those drills and so forth, and they know exactly what they should do, because you telling them, listen, don't try to get the door, go out the window, which is the closest. It's very safe for them to do, because they know, okay, mommy said we can do it, but
Yeah.
you didn't tell them that they're looking to go to the front
They're
door,
looking for
and,
the door.
and they might get trapped inside the
Yeah.
house.
So
Yes.
a plan is very important, and I think it starts at home, but it must also be reinforced at schools, because there is nothing that you can tell a child that a teacher has told them
Yes.
that can contradict what the teacher has told them.
Yes, in some cases
Teachers
that
have
is.
the ultimate power when it comes to children.
Yes, I actually recall having a conversation with he was once the PS in the Ministry of Education, and he was once my principal in St. Andrew's Anglican Secondary School, and he was saying that he realized the power of a teacher is really and truly was when one of his children actually came home with some math work, and he was assisting with the math work. He actually taught math. And he was telling his child, okay, this is how you do it. And the teacher was like, no, that's not how Miss teach me. That's not. And he's a secondary school teacher.
Yep.
His child is in primary school, but the child is saying, listen, this is what the teacher said. So it's
Yep.
very important that teachers take their role seriously.
Of course.
Right? So in the case of fire safety, but in the all-round aspect of the things they do, not only the things that teach them, but the things they do also.
Yeah.
Because teachers are very influential on children.
Very, very influential. Very influential. So it really was a pleasure having you here. It looks like we don't have any more calls. Of course, I like when we don't have calls, because it means that the message is getting out there clearly enough. So I like that. So I'm going to let you run off. Of course, I won't keep you for the next half hour, because I think we've covered almost everything that needs to be covered. But I'm excited about this campaign. I'm excited about getting our kids involved in learning about fire safety on a holistic level. You know, not just a parent sitting and talking to their child, but also it being reinforced at school and reinforced in other places that you go. So that's very important, because like you said, there has not been an upsurge in the amount of fires.
Yes.
But there's been an upsurge in social media usage.
In the publicizing of those fires.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. All right. So it really has been a pleasure having you here. Of course, please do not be a stranger. Feel free to come and share whatever information you may have with us, and we will be more than happy to receive you. Guys, we're going to take a short break, and of course, we'll be back with some more conversation on different topics, because we have so much going on. We'll be right back.
Stay up to date with all that's happening with the new national party, NNP. Send us a message via text or WhatsApp on 405-8683 with your name, email, and constituency. Stay in the know with NNP. Get updated.
Information for us this morning. I hope that everyone had an opportunity to listen and to share, because we have had so many complaints, so much bashing of our firemen, that sometimes we tend to forget they are people too. And like we said, properties can be lost and regained, but life once lost cannot be regained. So please take that into consideration. And sometimes you go on the scene of a fire. I remember that fire in that Europa building very, 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 very vividly. And there was a lot of bashing after individuals in society were making comments to why there were officers just standing there and so on. Sometimes you just don't know. Preliminary work has to be done first. They can't just jump off the fire truck and run into the scene of a fire and expect it to end well. There's so many things that you have to take into consideration. But most importantly, please ensure that you follow the fire safety tips, install smoke alarms on every level of your home, inside the bedrooms and outside of sleeping areas. And I think that is most important, simply because you may be in a situation where you're asleep at night and there's a fire, and you're most likely going to be awoken by the sound of the fire alarm, because you don't want to be awoken by the smell of smoke, right? Or you don't want to wait until it's too late and there's too much smoke within the area. So fire alarms, smoke alarms, very important for household and businesses. And remember to test your smoke alarms every month. Not because you buy one and install it and it's never been used mean that the battery that works inside of it is going to stay alive until it's used. No. Remember to check it regularly, test it regularly, just to ensure that it's working. And also talk to your family members about a fire escape plan, how important a fire escape plan is, and practice it at least twice a year. Talking about it is one thing, but actually practicing it letting them know, walking them through an exit strategy so that we don't have any fatalities in the event of a fire. And of course, if a fire occurs in your home or in your business place, get out, stay out, and call for help. Never go back inside for anything or anyone. I know sometimes we believe, and that's why an escape plan is so very, very important. You know, you don't go back in for anyone or anything at that matter. Very, very important. We have a caller on the line. Good morning, caller. Hello, caller. Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Duncan.
Good morning. How are you?
Well, I'm doing extremely well. You know, I'm just blessed to know that I'm living in an island and in a part of the world where this virus is not there.
Absolutely.
So just for that, I'm very much thankful.
Yeah.
And you know, the gentleman you heard that day from the fire service is a gentleman I know, I should say, and I must admit, you know, he handles himself very well when it comes to dealing with his profession. But I want to talk a little bit about what the situation at hand in terms of the virus. Now, Ms. Duncan, I have listened to our medical professional here even up to this morning.
Yeah.
And based on what they are saying, I am quite satisfied that they are receiving the relevant information from the World Health Organization and CARFA in a timely manner to deal with this virus. Now, do you know, Ms. Duncan, Zika was a more contagious virus than the corona.
Yeah.
And yes. And in Grenada here, based on my understanding from our medical professionals, we are doing everything here, working with the World Health Organization and CARFA, checking, you know, and putting the necessary measures in place to deal with this virus. And Ms. Duncan, we must not forget, do you know that the flu kills more than 10,000 people in the great United States of America last year? Mm-hmm. You know, do you know that gun kills more people in the United States of America every year than what the coronavirus have killed in so far? But listen to this. Those that living outside of Grenada and chastising the government from places like the U.S., Canada, and England, it is important that they all must remember that they have the virus where they are talking from.
Yeah.
They are more likely to catch this virus where they are than where we are. But we don't have it here. But at the same time, I understand the concern and the anxiety that is being expressed. But today, we don't have it here. And the folks who are chastising the government where they are, they have it over there.
Yeah.
And apart from that virus, there is many other situations where they can die on a daily basis out there. That does not exist in this beautiful island of ours.
Yeah.
Ms. Duncan, I thank you for the time.
All
today,
right.
And today it's Paraclete Sports. So we're all going up there and support the Paraclete Government School.
That's wonderful.
Have a pleasant day.
You too. Thank you so much for your contribution, caller. You know, the caller made a very important point. Some of us that have been making a lot of noise about this coronavirus and spreading a lot of fear and transmitting a lot of our own fears into other people must take into consideration the fact that we are still in the Caribbean are still at a low risk. And of course, the risk assessment for this coronavirus changes on a daily basis. All right. Right now, we might be at low risk. Next week, it might be something different. But it's important for us as a people to have faith and trust our health officials. You know, when the Ebola virus was rampant, a lot of us did something similar. We were frantic. We made a lot of noise. We talked a lot. We gave a lot of our own feelings and our own opinions as it related to that Ebola virus. And we didn't have faith or trust our health officials. But they were prepared and they didn't fail us. You know? And I feel like some of us, in the things that we say, the comments that we post, the rants that we are a part of on Facebook and social media, we come across as if we are almost hoping that there is no plan in place, as if we are almost hoping that our health officials fail. And that's a dangerous thing, you know? And I'm hoping as well that when this all dies down and our plan has been proven to be foolproof and work on behalf of us as Grenadians, that the same ones of you who would have gone on social media and said all sorts of derogatory things about the administration, about the same health officials that have been working night and day to ensure your safety, that you put your pride aside and apologize. Because some of you will have a lot of apologizing to do. You know, it's not fair for you to go on social media and express yourself in such a manner where you feel it's okay to attack a person's character and to attack a person's credibility. But when time passes and you are proven wrong, you don't feel like it's your responsibility to apologize. And it's time for us as Grenadians to put a stop to that. I've listened to a lot of commentary, a lot of people talking about this coronavirus and about Grenada and saying all sorts of things. And these people don't even live here. These people don't know heads or tails of what is actually happening in Grenada. They're just going based on what they hear. And sometimes what they hear isn't even an actuality. It's not even what's happening. And then they themselves take to social media as if they are most informed on what's happening in Grenada and say a whole lot of wrong things. I really do hope that when it all boils down, the same people use that same forum to apologize and commend the government and commend the health officials for a job well done. And if they do not, it says a lot about their intention in doing what they did. You know, we got to be careful with the propaganda that we spread. We have to take into consideration the lives that are impacted as a result of the things that we say, the falsities that we share, the information or misinformation that we provide. Because while you might think it is your responsibility to ensure that you share information, it is also your responsibility to ensure that the information that you share is credible, factual information. And if it is found not to be credible and factual, it is your responsibility to the people that you would have misinformed, whether intentionally or not. It is your responsibility to go back to these people, apologize, and provide them with the correct information. You know? Let's be responsible Grenadians. Let us be responsible Grenadians. I know we have the ability as a people to come together because I hear our voices in unity on issues that hit home. So I know that we have the ability to unite. However, it is what we choose to unite on that is concerning. I have listened to us and followed us on social media, uniting on things that are not so trivial. We unite on negativities. We unite on controversies. So let us now take that spirit of unity and divert it to uniting on positive growth and development for our country. Positive growth and development for our people. I hear a lot of people going at, and I'm trying to choose my words correctly here because I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm saying. Now, as it relates to the carnival frolic, the mass as we call it, I know a lot of us are not in agreement. A lot of us disagree with the rules and some of the rules and the regulations. But this is what I do want to say. A lot of people believe that in order for the mass to be pretty, in order for the mass to mean something, and in order for the mass to be relevant, it must look a certain way. There are a lot of us who don't believe that it has to look a certain way. I am one of the believers in clean fun. I don't believe that you have to put on a dialogue as it relates to matters that affect us. So whether you agree or you disagree, it doesn't give you the right to degrade. It doesn't give you the right to call into focus the character or the credibility of the head of the Spice Mass Corporation. It doesn't give you the right to disrespect or belittle somebody who doesn't share the same view as you do on what the costumes should look like. There are people who believe that the costumes can be decent and still be fun. This only gives people an opportunity to show us, to show Grenadians that it can be done. That's all that it is. Every single person is entitled to their own opinion. And I think that as Grenadians, we have forgotten that everyone has their own opinions. So before somebody shares an opinion, somebody shares a thought on something and it doesn't align with what you believe or it doesn't align with what you think, you are quick to bash. Sometimes it's best to agree to disagree. Just sometimes. And that's all I have to say on that. Because I don't want anybody to misinterpret what I'm saying. I'm not agreeing. I am not disagreeing with anybody. I'm just saying, let's be mindful. Let's agree to disagree. And let's respect everybody's opinion on the subject We can't all think the same things. We can't all want the same. That's why there's a word called diversity. But we have to respect each other. You have to be mindful of everybody's feelings, of everybody's thoughts. And ensure that when we get ourselves in conversation, that we speak from an informed place, that we speak from a place of facts, and don't just pick up something and run with it. I don't think that is what Mr. Killer meant when he sang the song. Don't just pick up any old talk you hear and run with it. You know? Because a story might be true when it gets to your ear, but I can guarantee that when it reaches 10 people after you, something has either been added, subtracted, or translated. So we have to be careful. We have to be responsible citizens. So there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of opinions, a lot of emotions flying. The only advice I have is to be respectful. And if we cannot engage in conversation, if we cannot engage in healthy discussion, if we cannot agree to disagree, then we have a very big problem in Grenada. Just keep that in mind. So guys, it's winding down to the end of the week, and of course we have so many things coming up. Of course, our Independence Day celebration is coming up, and that's happening on Friday. I almost misspeak and say the wrong thing, on Friday. Remember, our Made in Grenada Expo begins at 1 o'clock. Go out there and support our local people. See what they have to offer. You may not have the money to buy it right away, but keep it in the back of your mind that it's available locally so you can pick it up. All right. So we have that happening. Of course, we have the celebration and the parade that begins at 3 o'clock at the National Stadium. So you want to go ahead and support that. There are a lot of cultural items that will be happening on that day as well. The St. David's constituency wants, of course, to let the public know that they are having an all-day independence cultural extravaganza on Wednesday, today that is, at the Latente Junction from 10 a.m. until, all right, there will be an exhibition, food, and of course a local show. So you want to be a part of that. You want to take that into consideration and join the festivities as it relates to that. And of course there is the Prime Minister's luncheon for the elderly, and that's happening on Sunday. So of course it gives us an opportunity to highlight the elderly icons in our community and give them a good time. They deserve it. They've worked hard to build the Grenada to what it is today. It's on their backs that we stand. So of course we must honor them. We must appreciate them. We must respect them. All right. So we want to take that into consideration. And of course, I have a notice here from the Sacred Heart RC School. They would have had their first sporting activity, and that would have happened at the newly built or newly constructed La Porterie playing field. All right. I know there was a lot of talk surrounding that playing field, but it has come into fruition. They have had their first meet there. The field was upgraded. Of course, that began back in September of 2017 at an estimated cost of $2 million. Now, it's not 100% complete. The whole vision for that playing field is not 100% complete. But they are at a place where they can now safely host sporting activities and, of course, for our schools and the community and so on. So schools in that area, you now have a top class playing field to host your sporting activity. And of course, community groups, sporting groups within the area, you also have that opportunity. So I know that emotions are still high, but just remember, in all of the festivities, in all of our daily lives, keep abreast with what is happening locally and internationally, and depend on credible sources to get your information. There's an app, or I believe it's a website. My technical guy now here for me to ask him. I believe it's called Snoops or something of the sort that you can use to fact check your information. So if you get a story, look him, Naz, it's Snoops, right? Snoops is the name of that fact checking. Snoops, right? SNOPES.com, right? It's a definitive fact checking site. So you can go into that site, and I believe it's the link of the place that you would have gotten the information, to check your facts. Because like I said, anybody could sit on behind a computer right now, create a website, put a name to it, and post a few stories on it. Doesn't mean that the stories that I'm posting is true. So just remember that when you're sharing information on social media, the information that you are sharing is factual. And don't say, I didn't know. Check it. There are sites available where you can fact check your information. And remember, the only thing that has really increased in our daily lives is not the crime rate, it's not the fire rate, it's our access to social media. And because we have more access, it means that we have more coverage. It means that we have everybody now with a smartphone and access to social media. They now have an opportunity to voice their concerns and to post information and to post news. Just remember that in doing all of that, be responsible. Be responsible. Guys, we are out of time, but of course, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. In whatever you say and whatever you do, be safe, be secure. Enjoy your National Colors Day tomorrow. I know a lot of oil lung putting down, so I don't even know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm going to have a few plates of oil lung tomorrow, and then I'll go in the gym and kill myself working it out, but enjoy yourselves. And whatever you say and whatever you do, be safe, be secure. We always want to be talking with you and never about you. Enjoy the remainder of your day.
Airports Authority prepared for any eventuality as Grenada seeks to keep coronavirus from its shores. Details to this story and more in the National Report. With the details to the news for Tuesday, February 4th, I am Leslie Ann Johnson. The Grenada Airports Authority says it is well prepared for any eventuality, even while Grenada puts all measures in place to ensure that the coronavirus does not reach our shores. CEO Mrs. Wendy Frances Williams says the Airports Authority has a pandemic plan, which is part of its overall disaster preparedness plan. During the weekly post-cabinet press briefing on Tuesday, Mrs. Williams said the authority is equipped with an isolation unit and they have approved the purchase of an upgraded 4-bed isolation unit working in partnership with the Ministry of Health. She speaks to the procedures that will be followed if an arriving passenger is suspected of contracting the coronavirus.
We have secondary screening if a suspect case is on board. And if that suspect person is in secondary screening, we also have the isolation unit as a backup. And that person is carried to an undisclosed location for further quarantine. The airport has already sent out a NOTAM to all incoming aircraft and pilots with immediate effect that if anyone on board display flu-like symptoms, we must know before that aircraft lands on our shores. So that if it does, when it does land, that we could mobilize long before it lands. We have taken that step, that first step already. Once that aircraft lands, the public health inspector from the Ministry of Health boards that aircraft, and he will determine or identify or say whether from the health declaration form that is handed to him, whether there are any suspect case on board or if anyone goes to secondary screening. If an aircraft has to be isolated, we have protocols in place for that. Every airport, we have to have isolation area for aircraft that is isolated with these type of issues.
The virus has been confirmed in more than 25 countries and territories. 2 deaths have been reported outside mainland China. World Health Organization officials say it is not a pandemic and they are hoping it can be contained. The last pandemic reported was the H1N1 flu pandemic in 2009, which killed hundreds of thousands worldwide. Mrs. Williams spoke of other measures being employed to ensure that Grenadians remain safe.
We have in the immigration arrival hall also thermal screening sensors, digital thermal screening sensors that actually picks up the temperature of everyone coming through. So if we miss anyone, from the time you come through that door in immigration, you will have to pass through that sensor. Okay? We have also have in our possession as of 2 days ago, and we are going to erect a second sensor, digital sensor, so that we can pick up those that even if we miss you at the first entry, we could pick you up on entering the immigration arrival, the customs baggage hall.
She says the airport's authority has already ordered N95 masks and plan to order goggles and hazmat suits. As part of precautionary measures, 2 Grenadians have been quarantined, and the Ministry of Health issued a statement over the weekend that non-nationals with a travel history within the last 14 days from mainland China, whether in transit or originating, will not be allowed to enter any local port. That measure came into effect from 12 a.m. on Sunday, February 2nd. But while procedures are in place for passengers arriving in Grenada's ports via aircraft and cruise ships, the yachting sector still poses a challenge. Acting Chief Medical Officer Dr. Francis Martin assured that they are working with customs officials to ensure that all protocol is followed.
We're quite happy that they're willing to work with us to help us with the health declaration form. They're in collaboration with our port health officers, and so this is how we're handling it at this point in time. In fact, on Sunday, I was home and I got a call from Carriacou because a yacht had just came in there, and there were Chinese on board. I was quite happy to check with the epidemiologists to make sure that we were following the protocols, and we were following the protocols. They were cleared because they were at no risk for us, and that was actually a yacht that sailed into there. So we actually have our surveillance on that as well.
This is the National Report. More news after the break. Public Health Agency CARFA is recommending that all private flights from China should be accepted, but they must follow the commercial flight routes. It is one of a number of precautionary measures to prevent the global threat from reaching the region's borders. CARFA also recommends that no passenger who visited China in the last 14 days should be allowed to disembark from a cruise ship, and all cruise ships must have pre-boarding screening. These surgical masks do not offer protection, so the Ministry of Health has ordered more than 10,000 N95 masks, which will offer true protection. These must be worn by frontline health staff and quarantine staff. In the meantime, how can people protect themselves? Dr. Sean Charles, head of the Ministry of Health's Epidemiological and Surveillance Units, says there are some simple measures that can be employed.
Hand hygiene, cough etiquette. Don't cough or sneeze into the air. Wash your hands. Avoid persons who are sick. Seek medical attention if necessary. Teach your children, healthy practices so that they avoid diseases. Because as Dr. Martin said, for these viruses, there is no treatment. There is no vaccine that has been developed yet. Prevention is the best option. The Ministry of Health will do all that it needs to ensure the health of everyone. But we would need the assistance of the public and of the media in spreading the word that it's simple. It goes back to simple preventive measures, public health measures, that will need to be instituted to reduce the impact of this disease.
Finally, Grenada's Minister for Education, Human Resource Development, Religious Affairs and Information, the Honorable Emmeline Pear, says government is close to a conclusion and agreement on a number of outstanding matters that it has been discussing with the Grenada Union of Teachers. And it's hoped that an agreement in writing on conditions discussed could be done in the next 24 hours. Speaking with the media during Tuesday's post-cabinet briefing, Minister Pear said payment to teachers who participated in the rest and reflection last year was a major agenda item. But since government is under no obligation to make a payment, it is concerned about the incorrect message being sent. Both parties have been in discussions over the last few months about the conditions under which government is prepared to consider the payment. Minister Pear says these must be included in any agreement signed with the GUT.
The first thing that we discussed during that period was the issue of clarification on work to rule. And I did say that before. What does work to rule mean? We are quite satisfied that the union has made an attempt to clarify work to rule on its end. We've also discussed that work to rule must be an extreme form of industrial action. And this is not something that every Monday morning you can get up and hear that we are on work to rule. The second matter, as it relates to our discussion over the past months, as in condition, is that the government has no obligation to make any payment. And that has been there from the start of our discussion, that this government is not obligated to make any payment because we did not follow the protocols and the industrial mechanisms as stated in the laws of Grenada.
The minister says the first draft of a code of ethics for teachers was also discussed, and they are now working together on a final draft to be agreed upon between government and union before joint implementation. Good governance in schools and good employment standards and practices were also discussed, as well as ensuring there are no legal hurdles to present any challenges. Minister Pear is hoping there will be an agreement on the conditions soon.
The government of Grenada is quite prepared that once we both agree in writing to those conditions, which I hope we can do within the next 24 hours maximum, that once we agree to those conditions, the union and the government will issue a joint statement. And in addition to that, the signing of the agreement will take place. In other words, I'm saying to us this morning, I'm reminding us this morning, the commitment of our government is that we are prepared to make a payment to all teachers. We are quite prepared. The payment as it relates to monies not paid to persons during rest and reflection must be on conditions that we have been discussing for the past couple months.
And that's the National Report. I'm Leslie Ann Johnson.